In this session, we will focus on how you can create an Azure Application Gateway, how you can configure it, and how this whole thing works. So what we'll do is basically we'll create two VMs. One of the VMs would act as let's say one of the application, which could be a to-do application, and the other VM would act as a user, and we'll create the application gateway so that it can redirect the services based on whichever route the user has selected. So let's start by creating a VM first. Actually, I'm going to start with the virtual network creation first, because in order for the application gateway to work, it needs a subnet which is an empty subnet. It should not host anything in that. So basically we'll create two subnets. One subnet will host both the VMs, which is the to-do VM and the users VM, and the other subnet will create an empty subnet where we can host your application gateway. So let's start by creating the resource group. We will name the default subnet as subnet A. We'll leave all the settings as is. We're not going to change anything. And then we'll add another subnet, which will be an empty subnet for hosting your Azure App Gateway. Alright, so this is done, and now we'll go back and create a virtual machine. So you can select your subscription. So since I have only one subscription, I'll select the Azure Desk subscription. The resource group, I'll use the same resource group which we created a moment ago, and then I'll name this as VM to do. Okay, I don't want any redundancy plan. Okay, let this be as is. I'll make this as Windows 2019. I'll leave all the settings as is. I'm not going to change anything over here. Just that, if you look at this one, it's taking the virtual network that we created, which is the VM Apps Gateway, and the subnet. The only thing that we're going to change here is basically we'll place this VM in this subnet A rather than the app subnet. And you can see it's basically giving a public IP, which is okay. This is fine. We'll go to review and create. Management will leave everything as is. I'll move on to the next one, which is advanced. I'm not going to install anything, any extension, no tags. Let it validate if all the settings are correct. Yep, that's passed. Let me create So right now it's provisioning our VM to do VM. So I'm just waiting for it to be provisioned, and then we'll go back and create another one. So if I open this in a new tab, and what I'll do is basically create another virtual machine. Just going to be our users VM. So I'm going to select the same resource group. User. Okay, this is this. Don't want any redundancy plan. We'll select again, the Windows 2019 data center. I'll leave the size as is, and then we'll move on to next disk, networking. So again, in the networking, we have to select, it has to be placed under the subnet A. So I'll do that, and go to management, monitor, advanced, tags, again create, and then create. We'll just go back and check on our other resource, which is okay, it's done. So let's go to the VM, to the VM. Let's connect to this one. Native RDP. And the RDP file. So what I'm going to do here is basically install IIS on this machine and create a temporary HTML file so that we can access it over the internet. So I'm just trying to log in now. We'll wait for the system to load. Okay. So first what you have to do is basically click on add roles and features, click on next, next, next. Scroll down, you will be able to see the web server IIS, you can select that, add features, next, next, and let it install. And in the meantime, what we'll do is basically we'll go back to our other server, which is the user's VM. We'll go to that resource, we'll try to open that as well, and do the same installation, install the IAS there as well. So select So now I'm basically logging onto my user's VM. We'll wait for for this machine to completely initialize. It's taking some time. Again, I'll install the same IIS on this machine as well. Okay, let's go back to our previous server, which is our the VM2 server. So I believe, so this installation is complete. We'll enter the full screen, close this, and now what you have to do is basically create an HTML files. For that, open my computer, go to this PC, go to Windows, inetpub, www.root. You can create a folder over here, which is, let's name it as 2, and then you can create let's show the file extension. So first let's add the details here. Let's say h1. This and change the extension to HTML and make this as default HTML. So now this is done. We'll close everything. We'll move on to our other server, which is the user's VM. Okay, so installation is complete here as well. So you can see it is done. We'll close this. Again, do the same steps here as well, which was we will go to this PC, Windows C, inetpub, www.root, create another folder here, which is going to be our users, and then click on view. Click on file name extension so that we know so that we can change the extension. Do the same here, which is h1. Users h1. We'll rename the extension to .html. Okay, so what I've done is basically I've done a deliberate mistake here, and I'll show you how to correct that as well. So once you go to your VM user, so what we did is basically, we've installed the IIS, we have created the HTML file, and now we are trying to access that HTML file over the internet. And to access that, what we have to do is basically select the public IP address of the VM, let's say the VM user, and we have to type that name /users/ let's say default.html. So what would happen right now is this is not going to work, and I'll show you you probably might have guessed the reason why it's not going to work. If not, I'll just show you the reason why this is not going to work. So if you go back to the VM user, if you look at the network settings, if we go to the NSG group, which is the network security group, we don't have any rules which says allow the incoming traffic on port 80. So we have to add that rule, and that's the reason this is not working. So if I do that, if I create an inbound port rule, I'll leave everything as is and just change the service to HTTP so that the destination port range is 80, and leave the priority as 310 and this. Okay, we would have to wait for some time for the rule to be added and it to work, so we'll just wait. Okay, since we have added the rule, and so now we'll test it out, whether it's going to work or not. So if we say /users/default.html. So there you go. Now it works. So you can see, it is working now. And if you don't have that rule in the NSG or the network security group, this will not work. So we'll do the same for the to-do VM as well. We'll go to the network settings and we'll add an inbound port rule here. The service as HTTP, and we'll try to access that port as well. So since we have added that, we'll copy the public IP address. Probably it will take some time for the rule to be properly added and available. So we'll wait. We will have to wait for that. There you go. So this is also working now. And now what we'll do is basically we'll go ahead and create the application gateway. So we'll go to the home. We'll search for application gateway. So you can see it's there in my recent services, so I can select it from there. You can see I don't have anything in the application gateway, so I'm going to go ahead and create the application gateway now. The same thing goes here as well. You can select the subscription, you can select the resource group. So I'm going to select the same resource group that we created earlier, because this has that empty subnet, app subnet, which is needed for the application gateway. So I'm going to select that. I'm going to name this as, let's say, This is going to be in the same region, which is all my VMs are, just Central US. The tier is standard V2. We have other options as well, which is the standard and the WAF, but we are going to use the standard V2 here. I'm not going to enable the auto scaling. So if you enable the auto scaling, what would happen is you can set the minimum instance count and the maximum instance count. So if this starts with, let's say, one instance, and based on the traffic, it will automatically, keep on adding another instances, and the maximum it can go up to is what you will specify in the maximum instance count. But since this is just a demo, we'll keep it limited and we'll go with only one instance. You can also add the availability zone, but since it's a demo, I'm not going to add anything here. We'll keep everything as is. Right now you can see this is basically asking me to select the virtual network. So I'll select the VM app gateway which we had created, and it's basically it has auto selected the app segment, and this is the right one which we have to select for the application gateway to work. So we'll go to the front end. We will have to create an IP address for the application gateway. This is the IP address that will be used to access the gateway end. So we'll add a new one here. This is going to be the So we have assigned an IP address for the app gateway. Now we'll go to the backends. We'll basically configure the backend. So since we have two backends, one is basically our users and the to-do. So we'll add both these backends over here. So I'll name this as to-do backend. And you can specify, whether it's going to be an IP address, whether it's going to be a fully qualified domain name, a virtual machine, or even you can specify the app services. So since we have a virtual machine, let's select that. So you can see it is showing both my virtual machines here. So I'm going to select the to-do because this is a to-do backend. And we'll go to add. We'll do the same thing for our users backend as well. And select virtual machines. Select the VM users. Add it. So what we have done is basically we have assigned a public IP address to the gateway. We have selected the backends. Now we have to configure the rules which will specify how or when the data it should be redirected to whichever backend, whether it's going to be to-do or whether it's going to be a user's backend. So you can see we have the front end, we have the backend, we have two backends here. We have the IP address. Now we'll configure the routing rule. So how it should be routed to the specific backend. So we'll add a routing rule here. We'll name the rule as rule A, priority as 100. We'll just provide a listener name here, which is going to be listener. Okay, we'll select the HTTP. We don't want the HTTPS for now. It's going to be a listener's type is going to be a basic one. We'll configure the backend targets now. So you can see you have two targets, so you can select the backend target as to-do backend. And the settings, you have to create a new settings now. This is the listener which will basically redirect to the backend VM. So let's name it as settings A. Again, the backend is also listening on HTTP port, so we'll just leave it as is. I'll leave everything, as is. I'm going to just go to add this. And now we can basically, add the rules, how it should basically, how it should reroute the traffic to the specific VMs based on, what the user is trying to access. So if we say add multiple targets, one will name it as /to-do/star. The target name will be We'll use the same settings which we have configured just now, settings A, and the backend target for this will be the to-do backend. So if the user is going to basically go to the front end URL and type /todo/star or /default.html, it should redirect the traffic to the to-do backend. That's what this settings means. So we'll add this. We'll add another path here that says /users/start. This is going to be target. We'll use the same settings and we'll redirect this to the users package. So if the users, type in the front-end IP address /users/default.html, it would redirect them to the backend target, which is the users package. So once we have added all these information, we can click on add. We'll go next for the tags. I'm going to add anything in the tags. We'll go to review and create. It's past the validation. We'll hit create. This is going to take some time, probably 1 to 5 minutes, for all the resources to be provisioned, for the rules to be created, for the listeners to be added. So we'll have to wait for this to be provisioned, and then I can show you how this will work once we click, or once we provide the specific routing and let's say users or to do, then how this is going to redirect us. So this took a while for the deployment to complete. Now I had paused the video till then. Now we are back. So we'll go to the resource group. We'll check how this will work. So you can see this is my application gateway. I'll open the application gateway now, and you can see this is the front-end public address that has been provided here. So we can copy this, go to the next tab right here /to/default.html. So you can see now we can access the to-do server. If I change the to-do to users, it is basically redirecting me to the user server. So basically this is how you can configure your app. Also, if you were following along, please don't forget to delete the resources which you had created, because this would incur charges. So how you can delete the resources is basically, if you go back to your home page and if you search for either all resources, or if you go to the resource groups, so I have two resource groups here. I had created all of them under the Azure App Gateway. So I can open that resource group. I can hit delete resource group, copy the name from here, the resource group name, paste it here and hit delete. So this would ensure that whatever resources that you had created would be deleted and you won't incur any charges. Thank you.